But it is not okay to use it in another creative project of yours without the artist's permission. And even if you do, the platform beats the hell out of you. Which is such a weird justification of stealing. Like, no, they are very creative and cool, and the commercial license is as cheap as $5. Like, how on planet Earth? These are 2 of my most famous models either created and published on makerworld. Both of them are French twist hairpins and they're completely free for any type of personal use. And when I say they're free for any type of personal use, I also mean go crazy with it. If you want to print one for yourself, go ahead. If you want to print 5 for 5 of your friends to gift them, also go ahead. And even if you want to print 100 of them to decorate a whole wall with it, go ahead, good for you. The only instance that their use is not permitted and it's not legal for free is for any type of commercial purposes without my consent. And these are just a handful of people who did exactly that. And when something like this happens, it's not called open source free model use anymore. It's called, you named it,
theft.
At first, I wanted to talk about this experience from my own point of view. For example, make a fun little story time out of it and be like, yeah, one day I woke up and I received a message that someone is selling some of my models without my permission somewhere, and I was so distressed, and then I did that, and I did this, and I was able to bring it down. But no, I actually think this problem runs way deeper than my own personal experience. And if we took a step back, we can see that it can actually disrupt the dynamic of trust in open source community. And that is exactly the thing that I'll be discussing today. So, for starters, let's briefly review the open source community. How does it work and how so many people are actually active in it? In open source design of industrial products, you have someone, for example, a designer or a sculptor, who creates a model through a CAD software and then shares online for everyone for free, of course. Then if you have a 3D printer, you can browse through the existing models on the internet and then download the one you'd like and print it and have it in your hands in like 2 hours. It is so cool and something so unique to the time we are living in right now, because like if you go back in time, for example, 30 years or 30 is even pushing it, the only equivalent of having something like this would be practicing a craft through years and then being able to create whatever you want from scratch without even needing to go to someone who does it professionally. Enough about how cool this is, but this link is actually provided between the designer and the 3D printing enthusiast through a 3D printable model library. These libraries often have a community forum as well, so this group of designers and users come together in an online space. So there is not only this dynamic of having access to a lot of models for free and being able to print them for yourself on your 3D printer, but there is also a direct access to the designer, to the person behind it as well. People can ask for something that there is not on the platform and the designer just creates it and shares it for everyone. This is not like that the online 3D printable models libraries are also doing it as a charitable act. These platforms are often sponsored by 3D printer manufacturers. For example, Bamboo Lab sponsors makerworld, Prusa Research sponsors Printables, and Ultimaker sponsors the other one, I forgot, Thingiverse. And exactly because it does profit to the 3D printer manufacturers that these platforms be very engaged and active and healthy, often they put various forms of encouraging policies on their platforms. But in my own personal experience, most of these programs come with a certain threshold. These thresholds, in my opinion, are rather high, so you have to reach, for example, a relatively considerable number of followers. On top of that, for example, number of prints and number of views, and you have to be able to generate a good amount of traffic. So the platform actually deems you profitable to hold through like a compensation plan and then get compensation. So the reason I'm emphasizing it is because this is important. It's not like that for all of the designers. Getting compensation happens as soon as they make a model and publish it online. And even after that, the compensation is not like a contract really. It's really model-based and algorithm-based, and it can change according to needs of people in various seasons. So the compensation that a designer is getting basically on these platforms is neither dependable or certain at all. So saying this, I now want to enter the topic of personal attitude towards sharing something that you've created online. Because with all of these compensation plans said and done, when a designer shares something that they created online with a community, first and foremost, what they receive is not financial. And I might sound naive saying this, but the sense of community and the appreciation that you get from working open source is one of the strongholds of actually wanting to be an open source designer. So let's take a pause and review how exactly trust plays into this community appreciation and the community engagement you have on open source platforms. I do believe that this trust in the community is something that improves and enhances the quality of experience for both sides. And when I say both sides, I mean both designers and users of 3D printing community. And I have good reasons for it. So as a designer, when you know that your design is safe and at least it's attributed directly to your own name, the flow of your creativity completely shifts from when you don't really know this or you're not sure of it. Because for example, if you know that the design you created is not going to be used in any ways that you didn't really permit, you're more free to create, more complex or more interesting stuff that takes more time and effort to be created. And in return, the community of your audience gets to have more innovative and more complex solutions ready to be printed in their houses instead of being bought. And this is a very badly structured sentence, but you get what I mean. This is something I personally struggle with a lot because depending on how anxious I am or how afraid I am that something gets stolen, I'm more willing to basically create something which is not very innovative and not very interesting as a result. And in comparison, if I'm sure, or even if I'm not sure, if I try to forget that it might get stolen, then the outcome of my creative process becomes much more innovative and interesting and also worthy for this community who puts their trust in me. And this brings us to the second form that trust actually takes in this community, the trust of the users. So this is not something very well talked about, but also users bring their trust to the 3D printing community. Imagine that you are, putting your time and the material you bought with your own dear money in somebody's design. And then after spending a lot of time and filament and electricity printing it, the end result is not really as you would expect it to become. And this is exactly something of a responsibility for the designer as well. And this is also something that I like to extensively talk about in another video, and it is not for now. But for example, the case of AI-generated models or designs that I'm seeing relatively often exactly is something that hurting this part of trust in the community as well. Because the user sees a very beautiful render or a thumbnail of a design, that when you print it, the end result is not really as cool because the design and more specifically, for example, the mesh had some characteristics or had some errors that because there was no human to look at that errors and be able to take them away, they stay in the design and they hurt the final product. And this, my friends, exactly brings me to the third form of trust in the open source community. There is a more hidden, more implicit type of trust in the 3D printables platforms itself, that by sharing your models with them, they won't use it in any specific way you didn't permit it. For example, you trust in them to not use your models to train their generative AIs. I swear to God, I have to count how many times I said trust in the past 10 minutes, and then it's gonna be a very scary amount. But anyways, now is the time to talk about how common it is that the stealing happens in 3D printing community and what forms it can get. So the first form of illegal use I've seen in 3D printing community is taking creative liberty with someone else's model without really having the permission to. And I mean seeing a model online and then taking it and changing it to your own liking and then publishing it under your own name without the other person even knowing or permitting that you are doing so. The problem here is a bit more nuanced because in some cases, designers themselves allow this kind of creative liberties in the form of creating remixes. If you go to any of the 3D printable platforms, you may see some models have links to other similar models that other people created using the original file. And those are called remixes, and they're completely okay and acceptable, and they're even good if someone saw something that specifically didn't fit the criteria of their problem or their vision, they can of course change it if designer gives their permission very explicitly. And if the designer doesn't allow it, then it becomes, well, a problem. I think this whole moral dilemma of modification somebody else's models without their permission is still very new, because as I see, being enthusiastic about 3D printing is still in the very niche and geeky corner of the internet, and it is not very widespread as, for example, publishing music online for free. Because yes, you can listen to something completely for free on Spotify and enjoy it in your parties and dance to it and whatever, go crazy with it. But it is not okay to use it in another creative project of yours without the artist's permission. And even if you do, the platform that you are publishing your creative work on beats the hell out of you. So I do think it is something that's gonna get better with more legislation and education and discussion about it. But for now, it is still a problem, and unfortunately, it is very common. However, when I say creative liberty, I don't really want to get mistaken for the creative freedom people put in your work after they printed it and, I don't know, they had it as a physical object. For example, on a daily basis, I receive pictures from people printing my designs and then getting creative with it by coloring it or bedazzling them or adding some little fun elements to it to make it more unique. You won't believe how fun this is for me to see that someone is enjoying something I've created even more than the main intention of just printing it. And this is completely fine, and I dare say even encouraged in a makers community where people would like to do craft, and 3D printer is not more than a tool for their craft. The other form of stealing I'm seeing is basically printing a whole lot of somebody's design and then selling it to gain profits without having their permission or without giving them any attribute. And I don't know how should I even sentence that this is not okay, because it is so crystal clear to not sell something that you don't have the permission to. And that's the end of it. Some people may say that the model is just out in the wild, ready for grab, and once you publish it, you can't really have any claim over it, which is such a weird justification of the stealing. Like, no, if something is out there in the open, use it as intended. Don't customize its use to your fancy. Like, it is as weird as someone says, there's like a street furniture in the street and it is public for everyone to use, so I just grab it and put it in my living room, I guess. It's actually fairly simple to get permission of a designer to sell their designs, and believe me, it's not like that the designer doesn't know someone would like to print and sell their models. And they also know that there's an audience who'd like to purchase the printed version of their design. Like, it is so clear to see just by looking at the designs that people are publishing. A lot of creators, including me, offer licenses for commercial purposes very cheaply to their audience. I saw licenses from sellers who do very amazing job. For example, they publish 1 or 2 models per week, and the models are good quality, they are very creative and cool, and the commercial license is as cheap as $5. Like, how on planet Earth? Like, at this point, this creator is just begging you to literally come ask for their legal permission, because $5 a month is like a joke for having access to such a wide collection of models. So yeah, I really don't get it why someone should actively try to break this trust. As I mentioned before, the open source community is not only very new, but also super powerful. We are living in a highly capitalistic era where all of our smallest needs and experiences are getting commercialized and sold to us. In this time period, being able to change the narrative with something as simple as getting together and form a community is very rare. What open source product design is doing is basically freeing some of our basic everyday needs from this strong capitalistic chokehold that the industry of design has on us, where design is just another lever to be able to sell more. I don't really want to sing praises to this whole business model of having an open source a 3D printable models library because, as I mentioned earlier, this model is neither error-free or very just. But I want to finish this video on a high note, reminding us what this community means and what it brings to us. Unlike lots of industry leaders we are seeing in today's market, the designers on an open source community work on a mission of creating more with higher quality, more customizable, even repairable for everyone. Recently, I'm seeing a lot of projects that they are absolutely mind-blowing to see being designed open source and be just shared for free. For example, house furniture, 3D printable keyboards, mouses, I don't know, audio players, you name it, shoes. And none of these are products that they are either very easy to design or very cheap to purchase. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, having trust in a community that acknowledges your effort and appreciates you is one of the main drives that people are willing to put in effort to create more innovative and more complex projects and bring them to life for a lot of other people. So yeah, I guess keep the community safe and enjoy it as a group of people who are more powerful together. Now I'm starting to sound like an anime character. But yeah, that's it. Stay rad and protect the community. So thank you for sticking around until here. I'm Ray and I talk about design, open source community, and 3D printing. If you enjoyed these topics, make sure to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this. If you enjoy 3D printing or cosplaying, make sure to check out my makerworld account for a lot of wearable 3D prints and basically cosplay accessories. And if you have any suggestions for the topics you want me to talk about, make sure to drop them in the comments of this video or in my messages on makerworld platform or on my other platform, Ko-Fi. Thanks again, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye bye! If you are a 3D printer, it is unbelievable how cheap this is. It is weird. I'm saying, for example, too much. Where design is just another lever to sell more.